Welcome to my review of the POCO M7 Pro 5G. So an affordable phone from them, powered by a Dimensity 7025. This version that POCO sent out to me has 12 gigabytes of RAM and 250 gigabytes of storage. Now this is a quicker review here from me, so let's just jump straight into it. Included, you get a TPU case that happens to fit it absolutely perfectly. There's a raised bump there for where our camera is located. So we've got 2 megapixels and 50. This has optical image stabilization, large POCO branding, dual tone LED flash, and a phone that is 190 grams. Now the thickness of it, this isn't bad. It's 8 millimeters, not measuring where the cameras are. Plastic frame to it. Type-C port down the bottom. The SIM tray takes MicroSD card or 1 nano SIM, or 2 nano SIMs and no microSD card. Dual loudspeakers, Type-C of course, microphone there, IR transmitter, and a 3.5 millimeter. So it's got FM radio too with it. So that's great. An affordable phone has all those things that we used to get. And if you still want FM radio, 3.5 millimeter, microSD card support, well, you have it with this phone. So the battery capacity, 5,110 milliamp hours. You get included a 45 watt charger. I'll give you the charge time later in the review. Type A to Type-C cable, and of course our SIM tray tool. There is a little bit of paperwork there. So that's all you get included, which again, fantastic that all of that is included with this affordable phone here from POCO. Now we do have HyperOS, and you can enable the apps drawer, which I've got on at the moment, or just not have that at all. Now I want to talk a little bit about how fluid the UI is, because now set to 120 Hz, and once I went through all the setup, installed all my apps, it is fluid. But at the beginning, when it was first set by default to 60 Hz refresh rate, it felt a little bit sluggish, and I wasn't so happy with the performance. But once you slap it onto and force it onto 120, it seems to be so much better, the UI and just getting in around the phone. Not to say that now and then you will experience a few lags. This is not an amazingly powerful chipset, that Dimensity 7025. It's okay, but it's certainly no flagship chipset. So a little more on the display here. Their claim is that I think it can go over the peak brightness of 2100. I've not been able to measure that, but in direct sunlight, you can see now it is viewable. We get all your typical settings in here. You've got your color scheme. You can adjust the white balance. And this is where I force that refresh rate to 120 Hertz to make it all fluid. Touch gestures are working fine. The UI seems to be pretty good to respond to touch. So all up, checks out for the price point, definitely. So there is already a firmware out that I, of course, have updated to and I'm running. And when you first boot it up, you're going to have this bloatware. Not only just the pre-installed applications, of which there's quite a few. I counted over 17 of them. There is also this that you'll see, some advertisements with things like the system cleaner or the theming app. You're going to see these ads. A slight annoyance, but this is how it is out of the box just by default. Widevine level 1 cert, so Netflix, Amazon Prime Video is in full HD, which is great. And our Antutu score shows that it is what it is, an affordable phone, that it's not incredibly powerful, but it'll still play all those games out there. And I'll talk about that later in the review about the gaming performance. The good news is, not being a super powerful chip, it's reasonably good on the battery, and it doesn't really get that hot. It has the plastic frame around it, as I mentioned before too. So the storage speeds, they're okay, 1,000 sequential reads and writes. The randoms look pretty good. I have the 256 gigabyte version here. Battery runtime, forced it to 120 Hertz. And this is a very high brightness that I run to give a more realistic result now with the working battery life. 10 hours and 4 minutes, fantastic. So it's got a really good battery in this. It will go for most people for about 2 days, unless, of course, you're gaming or doing something very demanding. Charge time, not amazing at 45 watts, but I, again, think it's acceptable for what this phone costs. 53 minutes only to go from 17 to 100%. So decent. Under 1 hour, that's perfectly acceptable for this capacity. Here I am in YouTube and testing out haptics. You can hear that motor. It's very weak. It makes more noise than it does actual vibration. At least it's there, but yeah, not very good. Don't like the haptics in this phone at all. I'm in YouTube, which of course will work up to the resolution of 1080p is what it does allow me. Quality, you can force that. although it's saying high here, but eventually you'll get up to that 1080p. Now, voice call quality does sound good on this phone. I haven't had any problems. The proximity sensor does, well, I haven't encountered any issues with the screen coming on while I am in a call or anything like that. And all up does seem to be good. So what about the dual loudspeakers? Here and then the earpiece, I'll give you a sample. They're about a 6 out of 10 for speakers. Again, for what it sells for, I think fine. I'll play this track right here. What is good with these speakers is they are loud at least. How does the M7 Pro game? Well, on the low settings with Genshin Impact here, it is definitely playable. Yes, you see a few lags and frame dips now and then, clearly noticeable. So sometimes in some areas, there will be a few stutters. But overall, yeah, it is playable. You can see as I just even looked around there in a very basic area of the map, that you get those dips, those slowdowns, especially when things do load in. So you might be better off with this game to maybe even lower it down to 30 frames per second if you can tolerate playing at that frame rate. Personally, I like to have at least 60, which it does most of the time. Just don't expect the performance to be absolutely amazing. So over to the cameras now with the M7 Pro. Front-facing camera does shoot 1080p and it does have some electronic image stabilization. So the rear camera, 50 megapixels, can only shoot 1080p. I'm sure the chipset and the sensor can do 4K, but we get 1080p 30 only, no 1080p 60 frames per second. You can apply a bit of digital zoom and up until about 2 times it's okay, but going over that, it really does start to degrade that image. And it is a bit windy here at the moment, so we are hearing quite a bit of wind noise. Looking at our cameras, selfies are okay until you use the portrait selfie mode, and the stitching, as you can see from this sample, is terrible. This is the main camera with a 1x zoom, and during the day it takes an okay photo. 2x digital zoom still looks fine. And in general, the cameras are okay, but remember we've got no ultra wide and low light photos, they're quite poor. So let me go over the positives. First, it's a cheapish kind of phone, good price, affordable, but offers what most people would generally want in a phone. And great to see that we still have that microSD card support, 3.5mm headphone support, and of course FM radio comes with that too as well. Battery capacity 5,110 milliamp hours, should last for 2 days for most people. And it has a optical fingerprint reader that does work well, 120 Hz AMOLED screen that is quite a decent panel. It's flat. The weakness to this phone then, let's go over those cons. Well, the cameras are not amazing. The performance is not that great either. There's no ultra wide, it's just a 2 megapixel camera used for depth information for rare portraits. Front selfies are very bad when it comes to the stitching, as I showed you from my example. But if you're on a tight budget, then it's not a bad phone, considering and factoring in those pros against the cons there. However, if you can, try to get this phone here. And that's a POCO M7 Pro, which is a lot better chipset, Snapdragon 8 Gen 3. It's last year's flagship, so it performs very well, and it does not have the 3.5mm support, unfortunately, but you gain a lot more performance, metal build, and overall a better phone out of the M7 Pro, but it costs more. Check my review in the channel for that one. Thank you so much for watching.